Okay, now one of the other things you can do is when you're doing 3D modeling, so right now this is all just one cube, right? I took a cube and I started extruding it and I built this kind of spaceship with just a single cube, right? Um, but you can also just add in objects into a single mesh in Maya as well. Um, and just in 3D modeling in general, even if you're making something that's a 3D model, it doesn't always have to be connected together like this is. Now, this is connected, and that's totally fine. But if we wanted to accent it with some parts, let's say on this little top piece right here, I wanted to put a vent or something, I could easily just come in with my tools, and let's just say I'll grab a cube right here, and I'll move this cube up. And let's just say I wanted to use this for a vent piece. I could edit it, edit size here, probably cut the bottom out. Anytime you're inserting a mesh into something, then you're never going to see a part of it. Just cut that piece out, like the bottom of this piece right here. And I'll just come in here, and I'm going to move this vent down. I'll just duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. That's pretty good. Add a couple details into it. I always like to do that just to add a little bit extra to my model, just something that looks interesting. Maybe I'll come in here and add a little, I don't know, add some little cylinders on here just to break up this kind of boxy feel. Let me just go in here really quickly. I think our cockpit needs a little bit of work too, so I'm going to go ahead and extrude from this and just bring that down just to give it a little more shape. That looks pretty good. All right. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, and then like I said, I'm going to add some little cylinders in here, so just to break up the shape even more. Come in here, and I'll go create, polygon, go to cylinders. And I think this guy is going to need two nice ones on the side, so something like this. Let's put one over here, and I'll drag this down. Maybe they're like energy tanks or something. Or stabilizers, right? So this is going to go here. And we'll just jam that right on the side of the model like that. That looks pretty good. Rotate it a little bit. There we go. Now again, with my bevel tool, I'll just go in my edge mode and select the top ring edge of this, and then go to edit mesh, bevel, and then just adjust that bevel. And you can even add more segments too if you want a smoother look, something like that. That looks great. I'll come into this top. I'm going to turn my symmetry off because I'm just working on one side of the model. Go ahead and select all of these faces right here. Do a little extrusion, extrude in, and extrude in again. Yeah, something like that's nice. And what we can do is just take this part. Now we're going to get into transforms. So you'll notice that I move this model around and its transform kind of stays with the model, right? See how it's in the center? Now if I were going to duplicate this model and stick it like on the other side of the model, I'd have to move this transform so it knows to flip it on the other side. So right now if I tried to flip it, it would do it in the same spot. I also need to, you know, because I'm sticking it inside this model, I'm just going to go ahead and delete these faces out of here. Just come in here. You just hit delete. To delete those, delete, 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 delete. All right. Stick that back up in my model. Now to do that, or to flip this piece, let's say I love it, this is great, I want to use it for the other side of my model, I can just select the model, say modify, freeze transformations, modify, reset transforms, now you'll see how it brings that center point of that model back to the center of the world, right? Now, if I flip this or duplicate it and flip it, it'll be on the other side. Now to do that, there's a couple ways. I could just duplicate it, and in the scale mode, if I go to my channel box and just made its X -1, it'll flip it to the other side, right? Because I'm scaling it in the opposite direction, right? It's probably the easiest way for now to do that, but the other way is a tool called Duplicate Special up here, which will duplicate, if we go to our little options box. Now in Maya, you'll notice, we haven't really gone over this, but these little boxes next to your options in the menus will give you options for what to do for those different, instead of just activating the tool, you can actually do options first before activating it. So if I go to Edit, Duplicate Special, this little box, it'll give me this window with options. So you can see, oh, I'm going to duplicate a copy, make it a parent, and then I can do it in the negative axes if I want, right? It's probably easier just for now, just to duplicate it and change the scale in the negative axes. Now, one thing we're going to need to do is make this all one, get rid of that negative scale, because if we did bring it into Unity, it would look inside out because we've scaled it basically into itself. To change that, we'll click on that object and just go Modify, Freeze Transforms, and that'll make it all normal again. Right, it's looking pretty good. Now, one of the things I really love to do when I'm building low poly models is reuse assets. So I really like these cylinders I make. I think those are going to look great for what we're working on, but it's a nice shape too that I could probably reuse for other parts of the model. And I'm going to do that. I'm just going to duplicate, Control D, that piece, modify, center its pivot. We'll go ahead and change its size, modify Freeze Transforms. Now, one of the things I haven't gone over is changing viewports, but it's really, really easy to do in Maya. If you ever need to see like a front view of something instead of just using this perspective view that we always have, if you hit the space bar, it'll bring up your different cameras in your scene. So we've got our top camera, our front camera, our side camera, and our perspective camera, right? Whatever of these windows we hover over, so I hit the space key to bring this up, and whichever one I hover over, so let's say the front view, if I hit the space key on that, it'll turn into that view, right? If I hit the space key again, then hover over perspective, hit the space key, it'll go to that view, right? So you can kind of bounce back and forth between these different views just by hitting spacebar, 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 etc. Right? So I'm going to go to my front view here, and I really like this shape. I think it's going to work great for the top of this wing. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab all of these verts on the bottom, pull it up, something like right there. And I'm going to drag this piece down into my wing. I think that looks cool. All right, just to have that little extra detail bit on there. All right, kind of helps tie in the bottom part too. So what I'll do right here is I'll just again modify, freeze, modify, reset, and I'm just gonna duplicate it, Control D, and I'm gonna scale it in the negative direction to get that copy. Right, and here I'm just going to go modify, freeze, modify, reset, and we're good to go. I think that's perfect for our model. I think that'll work absolutely great. Okay. Now, when we're texturing our model, because we made this symmetrically, we want to think symmetrically when we're texturing. It's going to make our life a lot easier when we go into this model. And to do that, you know, we actually started without having this model symmetrical, so we'll go ahead and change that so this model is symmetrical. And I'll show you a quick way to do that. So first thing we want to do is let's just go ahead and merge everything together. So we'll come in here, and I'm just going to go to Mesh, Combine. Now you see when I do that, it combines all of those meshes into one single mesh. Even if they're stuck into each other, that's totally fine. It's one single mesh that we can use. But what we need to do is kill all these initial groups that it created, which basically hold the old transform data of all of these other meshes that existed in the scene. It's really easy to do. We just go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. Now we're just left with one model, one transform. It's ready to go, right? Like I said, what we want to do is we want to cut this guy in half, okay? So to do that, we need to create a center line on this model to cut this guy in half. And then what we'll do is I'll unwrap that one half of the model, and then we'll basically use that to unwrap the model, and then we'll just flip it, stitch it, and it's ready to go again, okay? So to do that, what I'm going to do here is go to my front view of my model, right here. The spaceship actually looks kind of cool. Okay, I'm going to go up to my mesh tools, and I'm going to go to Insert Edge Loop. Now, to change my views in Maya, right now I'm on my textured view. We have 4, which is wireframe, 5, which is shaded, and 6, which is textures. We don't have any textures right now, so we won't be able to see it. But I'm going to go to 4, my wireframe view. Okay? So in this view, I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm going to get right on one of these edges, right on the center of my model, and just hold down this edge loop. I want to create that center edge. All right? Just did it. My model, you see how I created this big edge around the center of my model? Now I want to do the same to these little grates that I made up here. So I'm going to go up to my model, we'll go to the top view right here, and I don't need the wireframe for this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and create an edge there, create another one here, another one here, you know, just getting as close as possible. I'll show you a little trick to kind of pull all this together. One right there. Okay, great. So now we have this thing perfectly cut in half. That's all good to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my front view of my model. Go to my face mode, and I'm just going to select one half of the model right up to that edge. So I only get the one half. And when that's selected, I'm just going to hit delete and kill it. I'll go to my perspective view. You'll see we have our nice cut in half spaceship, right? So now what we can do is we can unwrap this spaceship, one half of the model, and then when I'm done, I'll just flip it and we'll be good to go. Okay, so to do that, first thing I'm going to do is go into, just make sure this is all good. Okay, I'm going to go and click the edge of the side, double click that edge to select that entire edge of the model. And just to be safe, I'm going to use my scale tool and just scale it into itself. That'll just make sure it's like perfectly straight. That looks pretty darn good. I think we're good to go there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is with my model selected,